Smoke is coming off the harbor, and it is the wrong color. You stand at the high window of the copying hall with ink still wet on your fingers, watching Egyptian ships burn in Egyptian water. Nobody has told you what to do. Behind you stand shelves you have known your whole adult life. You can carry perhaps 8 scrolls. There are tens of thousands, and each one is the only one of itself in the world. Your hand hovers, Homer or the Babylonian star tables, the tragedies of Sophocles or the maps. Before you choose, understand how you came to be the one standing here. 20 years earlier you arrive by ship, a boy from the Delta with a good hand for letters. The Pharos lighthouse rises 300 feet out of the sea, and its mirror throws sunlight at you from miles away. The Mouseion is not a building. It is a walled precinct beside the royal palace, porticos, gardens, a dining hall, lecture rooms, and rooms where the scrolls live, all of it paid for by the king because the king wants to own knowledge itself. An old copyist inspects your writing hand the way a farmer inspects a mule. He tells you the truth on your first morning. You will not be a scholar. You will be the reason scholars still have anything to read. You learn the papyrus first. Reeds cut from the Nile marshes, sliced into strips, laid crosswise, beaten until the plant's own sap glues it into a sheet, then dried and burnished smooth with a shell. Your ink is lamp soot bound with gum and water, thick as blood. Your pen is a hollow reed cut to a point, and you will sharpen it perhaps 40 times before the sun goes down. The Greek you copy runs without spaces, without punctuation, without any mercy, letter after letter in an unbroken river. Miss one, and a philosopher's sentence becomes nonsense for the next 400 years. A finished book is rolled around a wooden rod, and a little tag is tied to its edge with the author's name, so no one has to unroll 20 scrolls to find one. That tag is the ancestor of every spine on every shelf you have ever seen. You carry it to the halls and slide it into its pigeonhole. The air in there smells of cedar oil, dust, and dry reed, the smell of everything anyone has ever bothered to write down. The poet Callimachus made the finding possible. His Pinaches, tables of everyone outstanding in learning, and what they wrote, ran to 120 scrolls. A catalogue so vast it was itself a library. Before him, Zenodotus of Ephesus had done something no one thought to do. He sorted the authors by the first letter of their names. Alphabetical order was an invention, and it happened in this building. The collection grew by methods you would call theft. Every ship that entered the great harbor was boarded and searched, not for gold, but for books. Any scroll found was seized, copied, and the copy returned. The original stayed. When Athens lent the official texts of its great tragedians against a fortune in silver, Ptolemy kept the originals and forfeited the money without blinking. Nor is it all Greek. Scholars are paid to translate Hebrew law into Greek by 70-odd elders, Egyptian temple records, Persian astronomy. For 1 century, this is the only place on earth where those worlds sit on the same shelf. How many scrolls? The ancients themselves could not agree. Some wrote 400,000, some 700,000. The honest answer is that nobody counted and everybody boasted. You are copying in the courtyard the day the chief librarian Eratosthenes plants a stick in the ground and stares at its shadow. He has heard that at midday on midsummer, in Seine far to the south, a well shows no shadow at all. The shadow's angle is a 50th of a circle. Multiply the distance to Seine by 50 and you have the size of the world. He is wrong by only a few %, and he did it with a stick, a well, and arithmetic. Another man here, Aristarchus of Samos, argues that the earth is not the center, that it turns and circles the sun. Almost no one accepts it. You copy his reasoning anyway, and 18 centuries later a Polish priest will need it. Euclid's 13 books of geometry are copied here so often your wrist knows the propositions before your mind does. That text will be taught, almost unchanged, for the next 2,000 years. In the medical wing, Hierophilus opens human bodies. the first in the Greek world permitted to do it. He names the duodenum, separates nerves from tendons, and finds that thinking happens in the brain, not the heart. In the workshops, Ctesibius builds pumps that lift water and an organ that plays it. Alexandria's engineers make machines that will not be equaled until the age of steam. And in your own trade, Aristophanes of Byzantium invents little marks above the letters to show how a word should be spoken. Every accent in every Greek book since then began as a librarian's convenience. The scholars eat at the king's table, tax-free, arguing forever. A visiting poet sneers that Egypt keeps fat bookish scribblers who quarrel endlessly in the birdcage of the Muses. He is not entirely wrong. You are not in that room. You are in the copying hall with a cramped hand and a lamp, and you understand something the scholars rarely say aloud. A book survives only as long as somebody keeps rewriting it. Papyrus is not stone. In this damp sea air, a scroll gives you 2 or 3 centuries at best before it browns, cracks, and feeds worms. The library is not a vault. It is a body that must be constantly fed new copies. Your old master remembers the first wound. Long before Caesar, a Ptolemy fell out with the city's Greeks and drove the scholars out, expelled, exiled, hunted from the precinct he was born to fund. The head librarian himself fled to Cyprus and died there. The exiles scattered across the Aegean and taught elsewhere, which spread Alexandrian learning and hollowed out Alexandria. Both things were true at once. After that, the money thins. The dynasty murders itself over the throne for 100 years, and a library is always the easiest thing to stop paying for. Shelves stay empty where scrolls rot away unreplaced. Then Rome comes. Julius Caesar arrives chasing a defeated rival, takes sides in a royal quarrel, and finds himself besieged in the palace quarter with a few thousand men and the whole city against him. The Egyptian fleet is about to close the harbor and starve him out, so Caesar burns it. The ships go up at their moorings, and the fire, being fire, does not stop at the waterline. It reaches the dockside warehouses, where scrolls sit crated and waiting, some outbound, some newly seized, some copies not yet shelved. A Roman writer will later record 40,000 books burned in that quarter. You run. Streets full of soot and screaming, ash falling like grey snow on the marble, and you with a satchel of scrolls against your chest, choosing by instinct what a civilization gets to keep. Somewhere behind you, someone has grabbed the wrong crate. Somewhere ahead, a soldier is using a scroll as a torch. Nobody is writing down which books just stopped existing. Morning. The harbor is a slick of charcoal and floating fragments, and the truth is more complicated than the story you will hear later. The Mouseion still stands. Scholars will study here for 300 more years. That is the hardest thing to accept. There was no single night when the Library of Alexandria died. There was one bad fire, and then 200 years of nobody quite deciding to save it. Mark Antony is said to have handed Cleopatra 200,000 scrolls from the rival library at Pergamum to make the loss good. Possibly it happened. Possibly it was propaganda invented by their enemies. Then the centuries take their turns. A Roman emperor puts down a rebellion by leveling the palace quarter itself, the Mouseion's own neighborhood, reduced to rubble and never rebuilt. The daughter library in the Temple of Serapis outlives it, until a Christian emperor's decree and a bishop's crowd tear the temple down in the year 391. The books in it are simply not mentioned again. But the real killer was never a mob or a torch. It was the morning a copying hall did not open. No new scrolls, no replacements, and the worms and the damp did the rest, quietly, for 100 years. Count what went with it. Sophocles wrote perhaps 120 plays, 7 survive. Sappho filled 9 books. We have scraps. Whole sciences, whole histories of Egypt and Babylon, gone in the ordinary way, unnoticed. 600 years later, someone will invent a tidy ending, an Arab general burning the books to heat the city's baths. Historians reject it. We prefer a villain to the truth. which is that we lost it by looking away. You were only ever the hand. You copied so the next hand would have something to copy, and one day that chain went slack. Everything you know that survived because someone like you decided it was worth the ink.